What's up, guys? So I'm back with more Radeon driver testing after my earlier videos because I've been testing the Radeon drivers every single update for months now, from 21.4.2, every single, even the optional updates, all the way to 21.7.1, and it turns out that my Heaven benchmarks have been wrong from all the way back to 21.4.2 based on the 21.7 numbers, which could be boosted a little bit from the drivers, but not by the amount that they're showing now. So basically, there's an actual bug. I've discovered an actual bug in the drivers to do with the game profiles and them not functioning properly. So basically, I know that on the older drivers before 21.6, I had Unigine Heaven's game profile set on multi-sampling, which is the performance setting, and it's the default. So under gaming, I had a profile here, and it was set to multi-sampling, but I had my global profile set to adaptive for AAA titles. It just tends to look a lot better and prevent shimmering and jaggy edges a lot better. So I used adaptive multi-sampling in here in the global profile, but Unigine Heaven had its own profile. So what happened was on 21.6, my Unigine Heaven scores, which were normally around 145 FPS average, dropped to 110, and I thought the drivers were broken. And I don't know if they've changed something something on the base level, which affected Unigine Heaven specifically in a big way, but I couldn't get around 110 average anymore. I wasn't getting 145 like I was getting in 21.5 and 21.4 drivers. So I knew something was wrong, and I assumed it was the drivers. And eventually, I was playing with the graphics settings, and I realized that the Heaven benchmark was no longer unlinked. It wasn't saving to its own profile. It was following global graphics. And normally that only happens on freshly added profiles that you haven't tweaked yet. So as an example, right now I've got it unlinked because I've manually tweaked it. Okay, so if I go in here, it says multi-sampling, and if I go to global, it's on adaptive multi-sampling. And if I change it to super sampling, the games that have never been tweaked before, like if I go into, let's just say Plants vs. Zombies, I don't know if I've said this before, it should be following global. So in Plants vs. Zombies, it's super sampling, but Heaven should be saved as multi-sampling, the performance setting for anti-aliasing. This is what will tank your Heaven benchmarks, basically. And okay, that seems like it makes sense. Like hopefully that makes sense for you guys. Now, if I go to global graphics and change it back to adaptive, Unigine Heaven should still stay on multi-sampling, and this is where the bug is. It's still saying multi-sampling, so it has not changed. I've changed global graphics twice. It's a unique profile. So just to make that very clear, and Plants vs. Zombies will now have changed because it's not a unique profile. It's following global. I've never tweaked the specific settings here. So as long as you're aware, when a game profile is freshly added, it will follow global graphics until you manually tweak something within the profile. And then it becomes detached from global graphics. And that is the way a lot of Reddit users believe it behaves as well. And the bug is it's detached on the menu level, but the actual game is still following global graphics. And that's where my benchmarks were all wrong because there's a bug in the drivers. I don't know if it's specific to Heaven, but I do know there's people that have said, hey, my game performance has been up and down, driver issues or game performance issues. If you've been manually tweaking your drivers and you use different settings for different games, like there might be a AAA title, you might play some Cyberpunk or something else, or Witcher 3 even is a big one because in Witcher 3 sometimes some guides recommend enabling adaptive multi-sampling because it looks better in some titles. So you might have went and changed it, but then you've got your default set on something else, your global set on something else, and it's actually global's controlling all of it for some titles. So yeah, I have to get more user feedback and have other users give me some info on what's happening on their systems to make sure it's not just specific to my setup. But in terms of my actual setup, I've stability tested memory. I've ran HCI mem test to 400%. I'm not getting crashes in any titles. All the other games are performing perfectly fine. My temperatures are good. My chipset drivers are up to date. My BIOS is up to date. There's just nothing out of the ordinary apart from this weird driver behavior. And I've also tried DDU, like I fully uninstalled the drivers with display driver uninstaller and reinstalled them, and it's just behaving the same way. So I'll just demonstrate now. I'll show you what Heaven's doing. If I go here into the gaming tab, Heaven is on multi-sampling, as I've shown you. It's detached from global, and global is on adaptive. And if I launch Heaven now and run the benchmark for a few seconds, you can already tell if it's on multi-sampling or not. So on multi-sampling, Heaven runs around 150 to 180 FPS in 1080p Ultra Extreme with the tessellation mode set to AMD optimized, which is what I've always had it on. And with adaptive multi-sampling, the FPS tanks to around 110. So as you can see here in the top right, it's running 110 at this intro scene. And that's all you need to know. If like, you don't have to run the whole benchmark. You can already tell it's on adaptive multi-sampling right now, even though the profile is set to multi-sampling in the game-specific. It should be detached and saved as itself. So see, it says multi-sampling here. Okay, so I'm fully closing Heaven, and I'm not touching the Heaven settings, so it's still on multi-sampling. I'm going into global graphics and turning it to multi-sampling, which should have no impact on Heaven either way, because it's global and Heaven's already got its own detached profile. And now when I go to Heaven benchmark, watch this. 150 FPS at this intro walkway, and I'll hit the benchmark button. 160, 150. So you just saw it was 110 with adaptive set in global, and now I've just set it global to multi-sampling only, and adaptive off. And you can just see it's like a 40 FPS difference. And that's what has thrown all my benchmarks off, because I did have global set on adaptive the entire time for every driver test. And I just thought, okay, that's what the RX 6700 XT does in Heaven. Like, it's not a big deal, because relative performance in all the titles and across drivers, as long as I wasn't changing settings, which I wasn't, relative performance is still the same. Like, it's still applicable in terms of testing stability and whether from driver to driver the performance is going up or down. But knowing that the profile wasn't working properly, all those previous benchmarks that were giving me 145 FPS for whatever reason, that it should have been up at like 180 at the end of the benchmark. Like, you actually have to go through, because there's certain parts of the benchmark that reach up to 300 FPS, and by the end scene it climbs, the score will actually climb up to around 180. But with adaptive multi-sampling, the score is around 140, 145, with the the tuning that I have. So all my temperatures are good. You can see here I'm running an aggressive fan curve. There is no reason the system should be underperforming. It is just that global graphics setting affecting Heaven's profile, or the Heaven profile not working is basically it. So yeah, I'm glad I finally got to the bottom of it. I hope AMD get wind of this and fix the profiles and make them work properly, because if I go into the game profile, just to show you again, the path is fine, everything is fine. I tried removing the profile and scanning it again, and this performance metrics that should have got deleted, they actually save to the drivers or somewhere else, because they don't go away. So I'll show you what these performance metrics are. If I go here and show the game stats, so these game stats don't get reset. But if I remove this, right click remove, and then scan again, it will add the Heaven profile back linked to global graphics, and then I can unlink it and try to save it again, but it doesn't do anything. It'll still follow global graphics no matter what I do. So yeah, it just means that global graphics are more impactful than you might think if you've got separate profiles thinking that they've saved. And it looks like they've saved. Like, it honestly looks like Heaven has its own profile. It doesn't seem to be working. So yeah, you can see this way higher performance. And if you go through my actual channel with the previous driver testing, you can see where I'm getting like from 21.6, I was like, hey, why is it? Because 21.6 did reset it, and the performance was even worse than normal. It was like only giving me 110 instead of 145. And then on 21.7, I tested again. It was still only giving around 110, 115 instead of 145. And then when I started investigating, why isn't it spiking to 300 FPS anymore? and I was playing with those settings, and then I realized it's detached, and then I adjusted global and I adjusted the game profile. Yeah, it just turns out the game profile's broken. So cheers, guys. Thanks for watching. I just wanted to get that out there because it was really bugging me, and it turns out it's not the driver performance specifically. It's a bug within the profile settings, and that's it. Yeah, please, if you can replicate any sort of this testing, if you've got your own game profiles, change your global setting to super sampling or something, and see if your games drop in FPS, because super sampling from multi-sampling should definitely hurt performance in a lot of titles. And just see if it's doing it. See if there's a driver bug, and the more people can confirm this and possibly submit bug reports using this top right button here, the bug report button. It's actually built into the drivers if you didn't know about it. Just go in here and select, put in the applicable title, and then give them a quick description if you've got the spare time. Cheers, and thanks for watching. Bye.